Well, VeggieBlaster is exactly what it sounds like. It's a good liquid fertilizer for vegetables. It just works really well as a mid-year kick, and it's a very quick, very readily available, low salt, just good all-around fertilizer for vegetables. So the big perk of VeggieBlaster is it's nutrition that can be applied very easily partway through the year, whether you're just trying to fertilize your plants because they need the nutrition, or if all of a sudden you're noticing some deficiencies. A lot of times it's hard to apply dry amendments during the year, especially if you're dealing with a lot of space, or say you have black plastic down and you can't do a top dress of anything. That's where the VeggieBlaster really shines. And it's readily available. If all of a sudden you see a deficiency, it's going to be right there, right now. The plant's going to be able to use it. And it makes a big yield difference, especially if you don't have enough nutrition in the soil already. The potassium or the nitrogen can be the difference between a little tomato or nothing and a whole plant full of great big tomatoes. So one of the other big perks, besides it being a full nutrient package with a full micronutrient package, we also put fulvic acid and kelp into it. Fulvic acid helps with nutrient intake. It helps them absorb into the leaves. A lot of times with foliar sprays, the plants only can take so much in through their leaves, but the fulvic acid really acts as a carrier and helps that absorb through the thick leaf tissue. And then the other perk is we add kelp, which is very helpful for stress response. It contains a lot of amino acids and different building blocks for the parts of the plant that are designed for stress response. So if all of a sudden you get a really bad drought year, whether it's just not a lot of rain, or you say maybe you don't have enough water running, you can't get drip lines to run enough water, whatever it is, if all of a sudden you get a real dry year, kelp has shown huge benefits as far as not only getting through that drought period, but coming back, because that's the big thing a lot of people don't think about. It's not just getting through it and surviving, it's rebounding and being able to start growing and pulling up water and doing its thing again. A lot of times drought-stressed plants have long-lasting troubles from that drought period, whether they have root damage or tissue damage, whatever it might be from that lack of water. Being able to push that out even just a couple days, even if you get 3-4 days and all of a sudden it rains, that can be the difference between losing your crop or losing a huge portion of your yield versus the plant rebounding and continuing on and doing well. Once you start getting vegetables coming on, that's really a good time to start feeding it, because they're going to start really ramping up how much nutrition they need and how much they're pulling out of the soil. And the hose end sprayers are really nice because you don't have to do any dilution, you don't have to mess with the bottle at all. You literally just screw it onto your hose, turn on the hose. It's even got a nice on-off switch. Basically just want to go over the plant once. You don't want to douse the plant and drench it. You want to get just enough on there to where you have some moisture. Basically you want to do a crisscross or a figure 8 as you're walking. That way you don't get double coverage on certain places. You want to get a nice even application, and then do that once a week or once every other week. So if you plant it in VeggieDoo, you definitely are not going to need VeggieBlaster at first. There can be some perks to using it later in the season. As I said, say you have tomatoes, once they really start fruiting and you have some good sized tomatoes on, then it may be worth starting to add it. VeggieDoo by itself is very nutritious. As far as adding fertilizer right to the soil, you will never ever need to from the start. You will have enough nutrition to get at least through the first portion of the plant's life. And a lot of people go the full cycle and never add anything, and they go right to the end, grow all their veggies all year, and they do well. But there can be some perks to feeding a little bit later on during those very demanding times, especially say in pots. If you have a big plant in a small pot and you're really trying to push it, it's used up a lot of that soil, then you can see some very big benefits. With raised beds, they tend to have a lot more nutrition, so you can push your feeding back longer just because they have more root space. They can stretch out and really grab from a lot more of the soil. And the other place it really shines is if you're re-amending your soil. Not everyone wants to dig out their raised beds every year and put it back in. And you can and should put a lot of it in the beginning of the year with Healthy Garden and Dairy Dew. Again, I go back to those dry amendments. Really, that's the best way to get the bulk of your nutrition. But once you start getting into those demanding periods where maybe a top dress of Healthy Garden just isn't gonna soak in fast enough, maybe you just aren't getting enough nutrition down into the soil quickly enough, that's where these really shine.